the first 30 words that drew me in, shaking my very soul. Everyone thinks they know me, the quiet widow in the corner, the one who gives without complaint. But today, they will see the storm. I woke before sunrise, the kind of morning where the sky hesitates to choose between darkness and light. The wind whispered against the window pane, carrying the scent of rain yet to fall, and I knew I could not linger in bed another moment. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from a strange electric anticipation. Today was the day. The day my life, all the years of quiet sacrifice, would finally meet its reckoning. For years, I had hidden behind the facade of Lila Bennett, the demure, compliant mother, the woman who never demanded attention, never caused a scene. But beneath that surface, a river had been building, silent, steady, unstoppable. And now it was about to burst its banks. I dressed slowly, deliberately, choosing each piece of clothing like a general preparing for battle. My navy blue slacks were crisp, my beige silk blouse embroidered with delicate patterns of my own creation, threads of perseverance and patience stitched into each loop. I smoothed my silver hair, tracing the lines etched around my eyes by decades of laughter and sorrow alike. At 68, I had learned that elegance is not about labels. It is about bearing oneself with quiet confidence. I placed the small bouquet of white lilies into my bag, each stem a memory of my son, Daniel's favorite flower. I tucked in the envelope, the official letter that would finally confirm what no one else had seen, what Stella and Meredith had tried to erase, the recognition of my work, my dedication, my life's purpose. As I walked to the train station, the streets were nearly empty save for a few early risers. The air carried the smell of damp pavement, and I breathed deeply, trying to calm the fluttering in my chest. But anticipation, I realized, cannot be calmed. It can only be embraced. 3 weeks ago, I had called Daniel's home, my voice steady despite the storm swirling inside me. "I'll be there. It's my son's graduation. I paid for it, and I will be present." Silence. Then, in that familiar, icy tone of his wife, Stella, came the words I had anticipated. "Suit yourself, Lila. I just don't want you to feel uncomfortable." I surprised even myself when I replied evenly, almost coolly, "I'll be fine." When I hung up, my hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the electric thrill of what was to come. They had no idea. Daniel didn't know. Stella didn't know. Meredith, that deceitful daughter-in-law, didn't know. And soon, they would all see the storm for themselves. The graduation ceremony was held at the old auditorium of Westbrook University, a place where the echoes of ambition and triumph always lingered. I arrived early at 8:30, giving myself time to breathe, to center, to prepare. Parents filled the seats slowly, pride radiating from their faces, bouquets in hand, cameras flashing like tiny stars in the dimmed light. I sat in the third row, perfectly centered. Daniel would see me the moment he entered. I placed the lilies on my lap, their pristine petals trembling in sympathy with my own racing heartbeat. Around me, families chatted and laughed, unaware of the quiet tension building in my chest. The hall felt alive, but for me, time moved differently. Every tick of the clock was a drumbeat, each second carrying the weight of 12 years of unseen sacrifice. When Daniel finally entered, he was tall, handsome, his gown neat, his stride confident. I lifted my hand in a small wave. Our eyes met, and for a moment I glimpsed the boy I had once held in my arms, the child I had taught to tie his shoes, the teenager I had consoled after a failed test. But instead of joy, I saw embarrassment, a frown shadowing the face I had once known so well. Then came Stella, radiant and calculating, walking down the aisle as if it belonged solely to her. Her beige silk dress shimmered, her heels clicking against the floor like a metronome of triumph. Behind her, Meredith floated, her polished smile and perfectly styled hair broadcasting a rehearsed cheerfulness that could make anyone feel small. Daniel looked from Stella to me, then back again, and I saw the choice crystallize in his expression. He approached Stella with a faint, almost imperceptible reluctance, then said, in a tone so calm it chilled me, "Miss Stella, would you mind walking in with me?" "I think it would be more appropriate." The bouquet nearly slipped from my hands. He didn't look at me again, didn't acknowledge my presence, as if I were nothing more than a shadow that had lingered too long. I watched them pass, hand in hand, smiles plastered for the cameras, my white lilies beginning to wilt on my lap. The ceremony began, applause echoing, cheers bursting like fireworks, and yet I felt a quiet, simmering rage, the calm before the storm. And then Dean Andrew Whitmore took the microphone. His voice, clear and commanding, cut through the applause. "Before we close, we want to honor someone extraordinary, a woman who has devoted 12 years to changing the lives of hundreds through our vocational program. Lila Bennett, the woman behind Sewing Dignity, please come to the stage." The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to me. I could not move at first. My legs felt like stone. Then, slowly, I rose, clutching my bouquet, each step deliberate, a march of long-overdue justice. Daniel stood frozen, his eyes wide, Stella's composure cracking as she realized the control she had assumed was slipping. Meredith fumbled with her phone, trying to disappear into its small, glowing screen. I ascended the stage, Andrew handing me the plaque engraved in gold. Lila Bennett, for outstanding contributions to community education and social development. Westbrook University 2025. Tears filled my eyes, unbidden and unstoppable, not of shame, but of vindication. He also handed me an envelope. A scholarship for a master's program in social management, a recognition not only of my past, but a path to the future. I could barely speak, overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment, by the culmination of a life spent in quiet dedication. As I stood there, facing hundreds of people who now saw me for who I truly was, I felt a strange, fierce serenity. Daniel, my son, had caused me pain, humiliation even, but he had also set the stage for this moment. And though he did not understand it yet, he would learn what true respect and true shame meant. I descended the stage, plaque in hand, eyes scanning the crowd for Daniel. He stood by the side, head bowed, hands covering his face. When our eyes met, I saw not defiance, not arrogance, but confusion, regret, and something fragile. Humility struggling to breathe after years of being suffocated. And in that instant, I knew that the storm had passed its first threshold. The wave had begun. After the applause subsided and the crowd began to disperse, I found a quiet corner of the auditorium to collect myself. My hands still trembled slightly from the intensity of the moment. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming surge of vindication and anticipation. Daniel stood frozen a few steps away, his diploma clutched tightly in one hand, as if it were the only tether to the life he had once carefully curated. His eyes were red, rimmed with the beginnings of tears, and for the first time in years, I saw the child beneath the man he had become, the child I had nurtured, protected, and occasionally shielded from the harsh realities of a world that often rewards cruelty over kindness. Stella and Meredith lingered near the exit, frozen in place, their confident facades faltering. Stella's lips were pressed in a tight line, the shimmer of her perfectly applied lipstick slightly smudged, and her usually impeccable posture betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Meredith clutched her designer handbag as though it were a shield, her polished smile gone, replaced by a stark, disbelieving frown. I stepped toward Daniel, plaque in hand, my heart pounding not with anger but with determination. "Daniel," I said softly but firmly, "we need to talk." He lifted his head slowly, his gaze meeting mine. The weight of his shame, his confusion, and perhaps a flicker of understanding, was evident in the way he shifted his feet, unsure where to stand. "Mom, he began, his voice breaking. I held up a hand to stop him. "No, you will not speak first, not now. Not until you understand the truth of what has happened here today." We moved to a quieter hallway outside the auditorium, away from the remaining attendees. The hum of conversation faded, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and the distant murmur of applause. I faced him squarely, my eyes locking with his. 12 years, Daniel. 12 years I dedicated to changing lives, to building a future for women who had nothing. And you, I said, my voice steady but edged with pain. You turned away from that, embarrassed by me, choosing instead to parade yourself with Stella and Meredith as if you had no mother at all. His shoulders slumped, and he looked down at the floor. Mom, I didn't realize... Didn't realize? I repeated, my voice rising just enough to carry the weight of my disbelief. Didn't realize that your actions, your choices, your willingness to be manipulated would one day bring shame not just to yourself, but to the values I raised you with. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Swiping through images, screenshots, emails, and texts, I handed it to him. Look at this, Daniel. Every attempt to erase me, every calculated word meant to make me invisible, every plan that reduced a lifetime of love and sacrifice to nothing. See what you allowed? His hands trembled as he took the phone, scrolling through the evidence. His face went pale, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear, the kind that comes when someone realizes they have been complicit in their own destruction. Mom, I didn't know it was like this, he whispered, tears now freely falling down his cheeks. I shook my head slowly. You did, Daniel. You saw it every day, every dinner, every gift, every word of advice you took as gospel. You let them mold you, shape you into someone I barely recognize. And worse, you did it willingly, enjoying the validation, the illusion of success while abandoning the person who gave everything for you. He looked at me, eyes wide, voice cracking. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I wanted a chance to succeed, to have something of my own. And you did, Daniel, I said softly. But at what cost? Your integrity? Your humanity? Your respect for the one who stood by you when you had nothing? The corridor was silent except for the quiet sobs of my son, the sound echoing off the walls in a rhythm that felt almost sacred. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was not a moment for anger, but for clarity, for truth. Daniel, do you understand now what you traded? The years of patience, of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the money, the blood, sweat, and tears. Do you understand that what you called embarrassment was not a reflection on you, but on the people you chose to follow? He swallowed hard, nodding. I see it now. I see it all, Mom. I want to make it right. I gave him a faint, sad smile. You will, but it won't be easy. Change never is. And it won't happen overnight. You must face your mistakes, acknowledge them fully, and understand that respect is earned, not demanded, and certainly not taken for granted. At that moment, Stella and Meredith reappeared, trying to interject, to excuse their behavior, to regain control of the narrative. Stella's voice was clipped and polite, but it carried no warmth. Lila, surely there has been some misunderstanding. We meant no harm. I turned slowly, my gaze cold and unwavering. Misunderstanding? You mean the emails plotting to erase me, the texts conspiring to turn my son against me, the conversations about selling my house for your convenience? Is that a misunderstanding? Meredith gasped, clutching her chest as if I had struck her physically. Mom, that's not fair. You invaded our privacy. I raised my hand again, calm but lethal in its precision. I discovered the truth. I saw who you truly are when you calculated what my death might be worth. I saw the plans to remove me from Daniel's life as though I were an obstacle. And I am done being silent. Stella's composed mask cracked. For the first time, I saw fear and defeat seep into her eyes. You don't understand, Lila. Oh, I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I understand that respect cannot be demanded. It must be given freely in recognition of character, not wealth or manipulation. I understand that those who cannot honor it will find themselves outside, looking in, until they learn the lesson they refuse to take seriously. Daniel stood beside me, still trembling, but now with a spark of something I had not seen for a long time, courage. He looked at his wife and sister, the people who had controlled him for years, and spoke for the first time with his own voice. I made a mistake. I was blind, but I am choosing now to see and to start making amends. Stella and Meredith recoiled, their dominance shattered, their power over Daniel, and the moment evaporated. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not of vengeance, but of justice. The storm had arrived, and it had cleansed the air, leaving space for truth, for reconciliation, for a new beginning. I stepped back, placing a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. Now begins the real work, Daniel. Not apologies, not words, but actions. You will learn what it means to honor, to respect, to grow, and to face consequences. He nodded, tears still streaming, but a new resolve burning in his eyes. I understand, Mom. I will do whatever it takes. And as we stood there together, amidst the remnants of shattered facades and silent witnesses, I realized something profound. The storm was not meant to destroy. It was meant to reveal, to teach, to show that even after years of neglect, betrayal, and humiliation, the foundation of love, integrity, and resilience remains unshakable for those who are willing to see. The week following the graduation felt strangely quiet. The echoes of applause still lingered in my mind, and yet the silence at home was heavier than I expected. Daniel had retreated to his small apartment, but unlike before, there was no tension, no pretension. There was only the weight of reflection, a young man coming to terms with the consequences of his choices. I spent my mornings tending to my small garden, watering the lavender and purple flowers that Richard had planted so many years ago. Each bloom seemed to remind me of endurance, of life continuing despite neglect, and of beauty thriving even after hardship. The first Sunday after the ceremony, I heard the hesitant ring of the doorbell. I took a deep breath and opened the door to find Daniel standing there, awkward, disheveled, but undeniably present. He wasn't the polished, arrogant man who had marched through the auditorium with Stella and Meredith. He was raw, exposed, and real. "Mom, may I come in?" he asked quietly. I studied him for a moment, seeing the years of manipulation, the pride shattered, and the humility that had begun to emerge. Slowly, I nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. Inside, the familiar scent of home, of coffee and lavender, seemed to embrace him. He glanced around, his eyes lingering on the furniture, the old paintings, the slightly worn sofa. "Nothing's changed," he murmured. "Why hasn't anything changed?" "Because nothing here was ever wrong," I replied firmly. "The house, the life we built, the love we shared, it was never the problem. It was your choices that created distance, not the walls or the furniture or me." We sat together in the living room, a quiet tension hanging in the air. I didn't offer coffee, didn't start with small talk. I let the silence speak, letting him absorb the gravity of the moment. It took several minutes before he finally spoke. "I broke up with Brenda," he said, his voice low, tinged with relief and apprehension. I nodded, allowing him a small smile, though my heart was still cautious. "And Stella?" I asked softly. "I cut ties with her too," he admitted. "I declined the partnership offer." They were furious. Brenda called me weak. Stella said I was ungrateful. I told them they were right. "I am ungrateful, but not to you." My chest tightened as I processed his words. Apologies are easy, I thought. Change is hard. Words are cheap. And yet, here was the first tangible sign that Daniel had begun the difficult journey toward true understanding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wrinkled, folded sheet of paper, handing it to me. My eyes scanned the document and my heart clenched. It was the notarized transfer of the apartment, signed by him, officially returning it to me. "I won't live there anymore," he said quietly. I looked at him, seeing the genuine effort behind the gesture. "And where are you living now?" I asked. "I'm renting a small place with 2 college friends," he admitted. Tiny, cramped, but mine. Something I earned myself. "And work?" I inquired. "I just got an internship at a consulting firm. They pay $2,200 a month." "Not much, but enough," he said, a faint, tentative smile forming. I studied him for a moment, seeing the humility and determination slowly replacing arrogance. "Are you managing okay?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "At least now I can cook rice without burning it." "That's progress, right?" I laughed, feeling warmth spread through my chest. And the frozen meals I taught you to make? I teased lightly. Not tried again yet, he admitted, grinning sheepishly. But if you're willing to show me, I'd like to learn. The air between us had shifted. The silence that followed was no longer heavy, no longer oppressive. It was calm, reflective, a quiet understanding settling in the spaces that had once been filled with tension and misunderstanding. I folded the apartment document carefully and placed it on the table. I won't take it back. It's still yours. But if you want to keep it, you'll have to prove you deserve it. Not with words, with actions. Daniel nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. How? From now on, every Sunday you'll come here for lunch. No phones, no excuses, no rushing off. And each time, you'll tell me one thing you learned that week about work, life, or yourself. It has to be real, I instructed. He swallowed hard, emotion flickering across his face. I can do that. I want to. And one more thing, I continued. Twice a month, you'll come to my community center. Help organize the sewing classes, meet the women whose lives we've touched, and learn what it truly means to change lives through work, compassion, and patience. I will, Mom, he said without hesitation. Anything. I made 2 cups of the strong, bitter coffee he used to mock and set one in front of him. Drink, I said. He grimaced slightly after a sip. Still too strong? That's because it's real coffee, I said, smiling. Like real life, it doesn't come with sugar. He laughed, a genuine laugh that warmed me from the inside out. It was the sound of a son finding his way back, of a young man stepping out of shadows and into authenticity. The weeks that followed were not easy. Daniel struggled with humility, with patience, with the discipline of real work. He stumbled, apologized, rose again, and gradually learned that success was not measured by money or status, but by the impact he could make, the integrity he could maintain, and the relationships he could nurture. Every Sunday he arrived promptly, carrying with him stories of small victories and failures alike. Sometimes he brought tales of minor setbacks at the office, other times moments of clarity where he realized the depth of his own behavior. And each time I listened, guiding him not with scolding but with wisdom, sharing insights earned over decades of life, work, and love. Twice a month we went to the sewing center together. He met the women whose lives he had unknowingly affected through my work. Their gratitude, their joy, and their resilience inspired him in ways no corporate seminar ever could. He began to understand the real meaning of sacrifice, dedication, and humility. One day, as we walked home from the center, Daniel stopped and turned to me. Mom, I want to make something right. Not just with you, but publicly. People need to know the truth. What truth? I asked cautiously. The truth about how I've lived these years, he said, his voice earnest. How I allowed myself to be blinded, to forget what matters. And that the mother I was ashamed of is the strongest person I've ever known. I want to share that to set the record straight. I nodded slowly, a mixture of pride and relief washing over me. Do it, but remember, humility matters. Speak honestly, from the heart, not for applause or recognition. A week later, Daniel posted his message online. No filters, no pretense, just the raw truth. He wrote about his mistakes, his arrogance, the people who had misled him, and the lessons he had learned through humility, reflection, and action. He acknowledged publicly that the mother he once felt ashamed of had been the anchor of his life, the unseen force behind his success, and the person who had never abandoned him. The post went viral. Thousands of likes, comments, and messages poured in. Friends, colleagues, even strangers praised his honesty and transformation. Stella and Meredith deleted their social media accounts soon after. Retreating from the public eye, their influence evaporated. 6 months after graduation, Daniel and I sat together in the living room, organizing my graduate research papers. Coffee cups in hand, we laughed over old memories and shared quiet moments of reflection. He hadn't become perfect, no son ever could, but he had become real again. And for me, that was enough. I looked at him, seeing the growth, the humility, and the love that had survived despite years of neglect and betrayal. And I realized finally that true redemption is earned not through words, but through courage, reflection, and consistent action. The mornings had a quiet rhythm now. Daniel was punctual, showing up for Sunday lunches without excuses, and I had grown accustomed to the sound of his hesitant footsteps approaching the front door. Each week I watched him evolve, piece by piece, learning what it meant to be accountable, to be humble, and to embrace responsibility rather than running from it. I often caught him staring at the lavender and purple flowers in the garden. "They remind me of resilience," he said one morning, leaning over the railing, sunlight painting his face with warmth. "Even after neglect, they thrive." "Yes," I replied, pouring coffee into our chipped mugs. "Resilience doesn't demand applause. It quietly grows, even in hardship." We sipped the bitter coffee in silence, watching the early morning mist lift off the garden. The air was crisp, carrying with it the scent of earth and flowers, and I realized how much these small moments mattered. The world outside could be harsh, chaotic, and unforgiving. But here, in this house, lessons were being learned, not forced. Later that week, we prepared to go to the sewing center together. I had begun expanding the programs, offering additional workshops for women seeking to learn trade skills and regain independence. Daniel had been hesitant at first, unsure how he could contribute meaningfully. But he had quickly adapted. He helped with organizing materials, guiding new students, and occasionally offering lighthearted jokes to ease tension. The women had taken an immediate liking to him, sensing sincerity where arrogance had once ruled. For the first time, he experienced gratitude not as a transaction, but as a reflection of effort and care. One afternoon, as we packed away sewing machines and boxes of fabric, a young woman named Maria approached us. Her eyes were bright but filled with worry. "Ms. Lila, I don't know if I can do this," she admitted, holding a stack of unfinished garments. "I've failed before, and I'm afraid I'll fail again." I smiled gently. "Everyone starts somewhere, Maria. The measure of success isn't perfection, it's persistence. Keep going. Every stitch, every effort counts. And look," I added, nodding to Daniel, "you have someone here who understands what it means to struggle and rise again." Daniel offered her a reassuring smile, placing a hand lightly on her shoulder. "I've made my share of mistakes," he said quietly. "But you're stronger than you think. Keep trying. Every day is progress." Her eyes widened, a glimmer of hope flickering as she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. That evening, as we walked home, Daniel's voice broke the comfortable silence. "Mom, I never realized how much work you've put into this. Helping all these women, teaching them to rebuild their lives, it's more than inspiring. It's life-changing." I kept my gaze on the path ahead, my hands intertwined with his. "It's not just work, Daniel. It's love in action. And it's not measured by recognition, by plaques or awards, but by the lives touched and the dignity restored." He nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of those words. "I've been chasing recognition, money, approval from people who didn't even care about me," he admitted. "And all the while I had the most important person, my mother, right here. I didn't understand." I stopped walking and turned to face him. "And now you do. That's what matters. It's never too late to realign your path." The next few weeks became a rhythm of growth. Daniel and I spent Sunday afternoons talking over coffee and home-cooked meals, sharing our struggles and victories. Twice a month he joined me at the center, learning not just the craft, but the patience, empathy, and resilience that came with guiding others. One particularly bright morning, as the sunlight streamed through the center's windows, Daniel approached me with a hesitant smile. "Mom, can I share something with the students today?" I raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "I want to tell them my story," he said. "Not the polished version, but the truth. About mistakes, manipulation, pride, and learning humility. About realizing the person I was ashamed of, my mother, was the strongest person I've ever known." I paused, feeling a surge of pride and apprehension. "Are you ready for that kind of vulnerability?" "I have to be," he said firmly. "They need to know that success isn't measured by money or appearances, but by character and resilience. And I want to honor you, Mom, by showing them the truth. The session began with our usual warm-up, laughter, and light conversation. When Daniel stood in front of the group, I watched silently from the back, unsure how it would unfold. He spoke with honesty, his voice quivering at first, then growing steadier as he recounted the years of pride, the misguided choices, and the realization that he had once been blind to the love and sacrifice surrounding him. He acknowledged the women individually, highlighting how their courage had inspired him and changed his perspective on life. Tears streamed down several faces, and I found myself holding back my own, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and deep emotional connection. Daniel had transformed not for accolades, but for understanding. He was learning to truly see, to truly respect, and to truly act with integrity. Afterward, one of the students, an older woman named Agnes, approached him with trembling hands. "I've worked in this center for 5 years," she said softly, "and never have I seen a young man speak with such sincerity. Your words, they will stay with me forever." Daniel blushed, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," he said quietly. I'm still learning, but I want to do better. Every day." That evening, as we walked home, he reflected on the experience. "Mom, I feel like I've finally started to understand what you've been doing all these years. And not just understand, but respect. Not just respect, but want to follow in your footsteps." I squeezed his hand gently. "And you will in your own way. Remember, strength isn't measured by dominance or control. It's measured by the courage to face mistakes, the patience to learn, and the willingness to help others rise." The next Sunday, Daniel arrived with a small notebook. "Mom, I want to start recording my reflections," he said. "What I've learned each week, how I've grown, what I still need to improve. That way I can see my progress, not just feel it," I smiled, proud and humbled. "That's an excellent idea. It will help you hold yourself accountable and remind you that growth is a continuous journey." Over the coming weeks, he filled the pages diligently. Each reflection revealed layers of maturity, empathy, and understanding that had been hidden beneath arrogance and pride. He began noticing small acts of kindness, moments of patience, and lessons in humility that would have escaped his attention before. Meanwhile, the center flourished under our combined efforts. More women joined, drawn by the reputation of the program and the authenticity of our work. Daniel's involvement brought fresh energy, new ideas, and a perspective that bridged generations. One day, while reviewing applications for a new workshop, I noticed Daniel pause, staring at a young applicant's file. "Mom," he said softly, "this girl reminds me of me. Lost, confused, pressured to succeed at any cost, blind to the love around her." "Yes," I replied, placing a hand on his shoulder. "And now you have the chance to guide her, to show her the value of patience, empathy, and integrity." Just as you've learned, a sense of purpose settled over him. And for the first time, I saw him not as the son I had raised, but as a man ready to stand alongside me, carrying forward the lessons of life, work, and love. That night, as we returned home, Daniel turned to me. "Mom, I think I finally understand," he said, voice soft but resolute. "I understand why you never gave up on me, why you worked so hard for me, why you demanded respect and integrity. And I promise I will honor that, not just with words, but with every action I take." I nodded, tears glistening in my eyes. "And that, Daniel, is the first step toward true redemption. Every day after this, you'll have the chance to build on it." For the first time in years, the house felt lighter, filled not with tension or fear, but with hope, understanding, and the quiet strength of two people determined to heal, grow, and change lives together. Weeks turned into months, and the quiet progress Daniel had begun to make at the sewing center began to ripple into the rest of his life. Yet outside our small sanctuary, shadows still lurked. Stella and Brenda had not disappeared completely from our world. Rumors circulated in social circles, whispers of disdain and ridicule aimed at my name, the house, and even Daniel's supposed failures. I ignored them mostly, because I had learned long ago that people's opinions were a reflection of themselves, not of me. But Daniel's face betrayed his awareness. He had grown stronger, yes, but his eyes sometimes flickered with the memory of past humiliation. One afternoon, as I sorted fabric in the center, he approached me, holding a small envelope. His hands trembled slightly. "Mom," he said softly, "this arrived in the mail today. It's from Stella." I took the envelope from him, weighing it in my hands. The paper was thick, expensive, coated with a scent that screamed of luxury and arrogance. I felt a pang of unease, but I steadied myself. "Let's see what it says," I murmured. Daniel hesitated, then opened it carefully. The words inside were polite on the surface, but beneath the elegant phrasing lay manipulation. Stella thanked him for his time, congratulated him on his recent achievements, and suggested a meeting to discuss future opportunities, subtly implying that she still held power over him. I glanced at him, seeing the conflict in his eyes. "She's trying to lure you back, Daniel. Trying to control you again under the guise of opportunity." "I know," he replied, jaw tight. "But it's harder than I expected. The temptation of easy recognition, money, or approval, it's almost instinctual." I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of the moment. The hardest battles aren't fought with fists or words. They're fought in the heart, in the mind. Every time you resist, every time you choose integrity over ease, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Remember who you are and who you want to be. Later that evening, we sat on the porch with the sunset painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Daniel stared at the horizon, silent for a long time. "Mom," he finally said, voice low, "I never realized how much courage it takes to stand alone. To go against the people who shaped my life, even if it's for the better. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions all the time." "You are," I said gently. "And that's exactly why your choices matter. It's easy to follow the path of least resistance. It takes a different kind of strength to walk a path that's uncomfortable, uncertain, and sometimes lonely." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I want to be strong like you, Mom, not just in what I do, but in what I stand for." "You already are," I whispered. Every decision, every reflection, every moment of honesty, that's strength. And the world may not recognize it immediately, but it's building a foundation that will last a lifetime. The next week, we hosted a special workshop at the Center for Women who had been through trauma and financial hardship. Daniel was helping set up the materials when a woman approached me, visibly distressed. "Lila," she said, her voice trembling. "I've been offered a job in the city, but I'm afraid. What if I fail again?" I took her hands gently. "Fear is natural. Courage is choosing to act in spite of it. You are not the same person who stumbled before. You are stronger, wiser, and more capable than you know. And Daniel here," I added, "can attest to the fact that setbacks do not define us. They teach us." Daniel nodded, smiling softly. "I've learned that lesson firsthand. It's never too late to reclaim your life, to rebuild, to start again." The woman's eyes softened, a small spark of hope igniting. "Thank you. I think I needed to hear that." As the workshop progressed, Daniel found himself speaking more confidently, interacting with the women, and sharing small pieces of his story. It was not easy for him, and at times he faltered, but he persisted, learning that authenticity could be more powerful than any carefully constructed facade. Later, as we packed up, I noticed Daniel lingering near one of the young students, gently guiding her hands through a sewing technique. "You've got this," he said encouragingly. "Trust yourself. Mistakes are part of learning. Every stitch counts." Watching him, I felt a deep swell of pride. This was not just my son. This was a man forging his own path, learning the value of empathy, patience, and integrity. The following Sunday, Daniel received a phone call from an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A familiar voice purred on the other end. "Daniel, darling, it's Stella. I hope you're well. I wanted to speak about a potential opportunity that could be very lucrative for you. Nothing complicated, just a meeting to explore possibilities." Daniel's hand tightened around the phone. I watched silently, ready to intervene if necessary. I'm not interested, he said firmly. I'm focused on my own path right now, and I don't need to revisit past mistakes. There was a pause. Then the voice sharpened, cold and controlled. You think you can just walk away from everything I've done for you? Don't forget who helped you climb the ladder in the first place. Daniel's voice trembled briefly, but he regained his composure. I know exactly who helped me, but it wasn't you. I've learned who truly supports me and who seeks to control me. This conversation is over. He hung up, his face pale but resolute. I stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. Well done, I said softly. You faced the storm and didn't let it break you. That's real courage. That night, as we reflected on the day, Daniel admitted, It's strange. I feel lighter but also scared. Scared of what comes next, of what I might face when people realize I'm no longer their puppet. Fear is part of growth, I said. The moment you stop being afraid of standing for yourself, that's when true freedom begins. Weeks passed, and Daniel continued to flourish. He started volunteering for additional projects at the center, helping women find internships and employment opportunities. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced the lessons he had learned: humility, responsibility, and empathy. One evening, as we closed up the center, Daniel lingered at the doorway. Mom, he said, I think I understand what you meant when you said strength is built in silence, through actions, not words. I've seen it here, in these women, in myself, and in you. I smiled, feeling the weight of all the battles we had faced and the victories we had earned. Yes, I said softly. Strength is quiet, consistent, and resilient. And it grows in places where no one is watching, because the real reward isn't recognition, it's transformation. He nodded, eyes shining with newfound clarity. I want to keep building that transformation, Mom, for myself, for others, and for the people I care about. I don't want to go back to who I was. Then you won't, I said, my heart full, because every step you take in integrity, every choice you make with courage, shapes the person you are becoming. As we walked home that night, the moon casting silver light over the garden, I realized that the real test had only just begun. External threats could always return, and the shadows of past mistakes lingered. But for the first time, Daniel was ready to face them, not with fear, but with strength, guided by the lessons of love, resilience, and unwavering integrity. And I knew, deep in my heart, that no force, no manipulation, no arrogance could undo what we were building together. A bond forged in honesty, respect, and the quiet, unshakable power of true love. The calm we had worked so hard to achieve did not last long. One crisp morning, as I was arranging fresh lilacs in the kitchen vase, the phone rang. Daniel hesitated for a moment before picking it up. I sensed the tension in the air immediately, a prelude to the chaos that was about to descend. Hello? He answered cautiously. A smooth, familiar voice slithered through the line. Daniel, darling, it's Stella again. I hope you're doing well. I have an offer you simply cannot refuse. Think of the doors it could open: wealth, recognition, influence. Surely you wouldn't ignore such an opportunity. Daniel's hand tightened around the receiver, knuckles white. I watched silently, my heart pounding. His voice was steady, but I could hear the tension beneath. I've told you before, he said firmly. I'm focused on building my life on my own terms. I don't need manipulation disguised as opportunity. There was a pause, and then the voice sharpened, cold and venomous. Do not forget who helped you rise, Daniel. You think you can just discard me and walk away unscathed? You will regret this. I saw Daniel's jaw tighten. Mom, he whispered. She's trying to threaten me. I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the tremor in his body. Let her words wash over you like rain. They have no power unless you give it to them. Remember, storms pass, and we survive stronger on the other side. He hung up, breathing heavily, eyes darting around as if the walls themselves were conspiring. I can't believe she still has the audacity, he muttered. It's like she thinks I'm still that boy who needed her approval for everything. You're not that boy anymore, I said softly. and you never will be. Each day you choose integrity. Each moment you resist manipulation. You reclaim a piece of yourself she can never touch. That evening, Daniel and I walked through the old city park, where the maples were beginning to turn amber with the first touch of autumn. "Mom," he said, his voice low, "sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be free from the shadows of my past. Stella, Brenda, they've left marks on me I'm still trying to erase." I nodded, understanding fully. The past shapes us, Daniel, but it does not define us. The pain, humiliation, and mistakes are tools for building resilience. Every scar is a lesson. Every memory a reminder that you survived. He looked at me, eyes glistening. I want to be the man who can face anything, no matter how frightening, without faltering. "You already are," I whispered. "But you must practice daily. Strength is not built in a single heroic moment. It is forged in the small decisions, the quiet resistance, the moments when you stand firm and no one is watching." The following week, our center held a special event to showcase the achievements of the women who had worked tirelessly under our guidance. Daniel helped coordinate the program, mentoring a few young participants personally. As I watched him interact, I noticed a change, a subtle confidence, a quiet authority that had never been there before. When one young woman faltered during her presentation, Daniel gently guided her, whispering encouragement. "Take a deep breath," he said. "Trust yourself. You've prepared for this. You are ready." Her face brightened with relief, and the audience erupted into applause as she completed her demonstration flawlessly. Daniel smiled quietly, pride softening his features. Later that day, as the center emptied and we packed away materials, Daniel said, "Mom, I've realized something. I can't undo the past, and I can't control what Stella or Brenda think of me. But I can control what I do next, how I live, and who I choose to be. That's freedom, isn't it?" "Exactly," I said, relief washing over me. "Freedom is a choice. It's not given, it's claimed. And every day you choose to act with integrity, you claim it anew." But our calm was shattered 1 week later when a car I didn't recognize pulled up in front of our house. I stepped onto the porch, curiosity and caution warring within me. The driver's side door opened and a young man in a crisp suit stepped out, holding a thick folder in his hand. "Ms. Carter?" he asked politely, bowing slightly. "I'm Nathaniel Hayes. I represent a legal office that has been instructed to contact you regarding certain matters involving your son's previous guardianship and financial arrangements." Daniel froze behind me, a shadow of fear crossing his face. "Mom," he whispered, This could be trouble." "Legal trouble?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Let's hear him out," I said calmly, though my heart raced. "There's nothing we cannot handle if we face it with clarity and honesty." Nathaniel handed me the folder and I opened it slowly. Inside were documents detailing Stella's attempts to claim certain assets through manipulation, emails, contracts, and even falsified statements intended to bind Daniel to agreements he had never consented to fully. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from righteous anger. I looked at Daniel. "Do you see now? The storm is here, but it is also an opportunity to assert what is rightfully yours, to draw boundaries and protect what you've built." Daniel nodded, swallowing hard. "I understand, Mom, but it feels overwhelming. I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to live my life in peace." "You can," I said firmly, "but peace doesn't come without confrontation. You must face the darkness to see the light fully. Every truth must be spoken, every deception revealed. Only then can we move forward without fear." Over the next few days, we meticulously reviewed every document, consulted with our lawyer, and prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Daniel grew stronger with each step, his confidence returning as he saw that the law and truth were on our side. Then came the day when Stella herself appeared, flanked by Brenda, in a sleek black sedan. They stepped onto our driveway, expressions poised, calculated, and cold. Daniel took my hand instinctively and I squeezed it back, silently telling him that we were ready. "Daniel," Stella began, voice sweet but edged with menace. "I thought we could resolve this quietly. No one has to be embarrassed. You've already caused enough embarrassment, Stella, I said, voice calm but firm, and the time for quiet has passed. You attempted to manipulate, deceive, and erase the life of my son. Today we set the record straight. Daniel stepped forward, holding the folder tightly. Everything she's done is documented, he said. Every email, every contract, every plan to control me is here. And I will not be coerced. I will not be intimidated. This ends now. Stella's composure faltered for the first time. Brenda glanced nervously at her, unsure of the footing she had once thought unshakable. I felt a surge of pride. Daniel was no longer a puppet, no longer a boy hiding behind fear. He stood tall, confronting the very people who had sought to dominate his life. And for the first time, I realized that storms do not just sweep away the weak. They expose the truth, reveal strength, and create space for growth. We spent the afternoon going through the legal process, ensuring that every attempt to manipulate or control Daniel was nullified. By the end, Stella and Brenda left, defeated. Their perfume and arrogance replaced by silence and the bitter taste of consequences. As we closed the door behind them, Daniel exhaled deeply, shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. "Mom," he said softly, "I finally feel free, not just from them, but from the fear that controlled me for so long." "You are free," I said, embracing him, "and freedom is the reward for courage, for honesty, and for standing firm in the face of storms." "You've done well, Daniel. Very well." That night, as we sat together on the porch, the stars glittering overhead, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had returned, yes, but we had weathered it, and in doing so, we had grown stronger, closer, and unshakable in our truth. And I knew, deep in my heart, that the lessons of courage, integrity, and resilience we had learned would guide us for the rest of our lives. No matter what storms lay ahead, the following morning, the sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, painting the old wooden floor with streaks of gold. Daniel sat at the table, tracing the rim of his coffee cup, silent but reflective. The air between us was calm, yet charged with a sense of renewal. "I can't believe it's over," he finally whispered, voice tinged with both relief and disbelief. "After everything, I feel lighter," I nodded, understanding fully. Freedom always feels that way at first. Like stepping out into a world you never realized existed beyond the walls of fear and manipulation. He smiled faintly, his eyes distant. "I never knew I could feel this normal. Not like I'm being watched or judged constantly. Not like I have to perform to prove my worth. That's because your worth has never depended on their approval," I said softly. "It depended on you recognizing it for yourself. And now, you do." We spent the morning organizing the center's new workshop, preparing materials for the women who were coming later in the day. Daniel moved with a quiet competence, his movements deliberate and patient, a far cry from the hurried, anxious gestures I had seen during his younger years. As the women arrived, their faces lit with hope and excitement. Daniel greeted each one with genuine warmth. "Good morning," he said, shaking hands, offering smiles. "I'm glad to see you all here. Let's make today meaningful." I watched him closely, noting the subtle changes. His posture was stronger, his gaze more confident, and yet there was a tenderness in his voice that hadn't existed before. He had learned empathy not from lectures or advice, but from witnessing struggle firsthand and confronting his own weaknesses. Mid-morning, a young woman named Clara approached us, carrying a small bundle of fabric. She had tears in her eyes, her voice shaking. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been through so much, and this program, it's given me a reason to believe I can start again." Daniel knelt slightly to meet her at eye level, gently taking her hands. "Clara, you've done the hard part already. Showing up, being willing to try, that's courage. You don't need to thank us. You need to thank yourself for choosing to fight." Clara's shoulders relaxed, a small smile breaking through her tears. I felt a lump in my throat. This was exactly why I had devoted 12 years to this work, to witness transformation, to see courage rise where despair had once reigned. After the women settled into their projects, Daniel and I sat at a quiet corner of the room, sipping coffee and reflecting. "Mom," he said, staring at the folded papers in his lap. I never realized how much I relied on their guidance, their influence, even when it was toxic. I thought it was ambition. I thought it was success. But it was fear. Pure paralyzing fear. Yes, I agreed. Fear is a powerful master, Daniel, but only when we allow it to control us. The moment we confront it, we reclaim our lives. He leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. I've wasted years trying to fit a mold that wasn't mine. I've traded honesty for approval, and I lost myself in the process. You haven't lost yourself, I said firmly. You've only been in the process of finding the courage to be truly you. And that's more important than any diploma, any promotion, or any lavish lifestyle. That afternoon, as the workshop ended, Daniel lingered to help the women tidy up their workspaces. He listened to their stories, offered guidance, and for the first time, he did so without seeking recognition or validation. His heart was fully present, fully engaged. Later, as we closed the doors, Daniel turned to me, a small smile playing on his lips. I want to do more than just help occasionally. I want to be a part of this, to contribute meaningfully, to learn from these women. I nodded, my eyes misting. Then you will. And in doing so, you'll discover lessons no classroom can teach, wisdom no textbook can offer. Life is the greatest teacher, Daniel, and humility is the key to truly learning from it. That evening, as we prepared dinner together, Daniel spoke quietly, almost hesitantly. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course," I replied, stirring the sauce slowly, my attention fully on him. "Do you ever regret anything?" His eyes searched mine for truth. I paused, considering. Regret is only useful if it teaches you something. I don't dwell on what I could have done differently. I focus on what I can do now with the knowledge I have and the strength I've gained. Every choice I made, even the painful ones, brought me here. Daniel nodded slowly. I think I understand. Every mistake, every misstep, it's a lesson. And the lesson isn't about them. It's about me, about who I want to be. Yes, I said, smiling. And now you have the chance to define yourself on your own terms, without fear, without manipulation, and without shame. The next few weeks were a revelation. Daniel committed himself fully to the center's work, attending workshops, mentoring participants, and learning the intricacies of social development. Each day he returned home tired but invigorated, sharing stories of courage, resilience, and newfound hope. One evening, he brought out an old notebook worn at the edges, filled with his scribbles from years past. "I've been keeping a journal," he admitted. "I never shared it with anyone. But reading through it now, I see my fears, my insecurities, the way I let others dictate my choices. It's painful, but it's also enlightening." I reached out and touched his hand. That's growth, Daniel. The ability to confront your past without being imprisoned by it, that's wisdom. A month later, Daniel posted a heartfelt message online, recounting his journey openly. He spoke of mistakes, of being misled, of the pain caused by those he had trusted blindly. But he also highlighted the lessons he had learned, the power of integrity, and the unwavering strength of a mother who refused to be broken. The post went viral, touching thousands of hearts. Messages poured in from people who had felt trapped by manipulative relationships, who had doubted themselves, and who found hope in his courage. Daniel's words were not boastful. They were authentic, raw, and profoundly human. One day, after a particularly long session at the center, Daniel turned to me with a soft smile. "Mom, I feel different, lighter, stronger. Not just because of what I've achieved, but because I finally understand what it means to be responsible for my life." "You've come a long way," I said, eyes glistening. "And this is only the beginning. Strength, humility, and compassion, they are lifelong companions. You'll continue to grow, to stumble, and to rise again, but each time stronger than before." That night, as I lay in bed reflecting, I realized the full scope of what had happened. The storm had returned, yes, but it did not break us. It tested us, refined us, and revealed the depth of our resilience. Daniel had been forced to confront the shadows of his past, but in doing so, he discovered his own light, and I knew, with certainty, that no matter what storms lay ahead, we would face them together, armed with truth, courage, and the unbreakable bond of family. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, I felt hope, pure, unshakable, and radiant, filling the spaces where fear once dwelled. Weeks passed, and the quiet that had settled over our lives began to feel like a tangible presence, heavy yet comforting. Daniel and I had established a rhythm. Every Sunday he would arrive promptly, carrying a notebook filled with reflections, eager to share his week's lessons from work, from life, and from the women at the center. We had created something sacred, a ritual that was less about obligation and more about connection. He would tell me about a woman who learned to thread a needle after years of despair, or a single mother who had managed to sell her first handmade quilt. These stories filled him with a humility that had been absent in his earlier years, and watching him absorb these lessons reminded me why I had persevered, even when the world seemed indifferent. One Sunday, as he unfolded a chair next to mine, his hands trembled slightly. "Mom," he said softly, eyes downcast, "there's something I need to confess." I set down my cup of coffee and turned to face him, sensing the gravity in his voice. "Whatever it is, Daniel, you can tell me. There's no judgment here, only understanding." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple moving visibly. "It's about Stella and Brenda." "About what I did before I came back." I lied. I manipulated situations just as they did. I let their words shape my actions, and I hurt people. People I cared about, including you. I felt my chest tighten, not with anger, but with a profound recognition of his growth. "Yes," I said gently, "and owning that is the first step toward becoming the man you want to be." He lifted his eyes, glistening, and I saw the reflection of the young boy who had once clung to my hand in fear, and the man he was becoming, someone learning to carry responsibility with courage. That afternoon, we drove to the center together, the car filled with a sense of purpose. Daniel had taken on the task of organizing the monthly vocational seminar, and today he was determined to see it through flawlessly. I watched him move among the women with careful attention, asking questions, offering guidance, and listening in ways that only someone who had endured their own awakening could. One woman, Maria, had struggled to regain her confidence after leaving an abusive household. She clutched her sewing kit nervously as Daniel knelt to speak with her. "Maria," he said quietly, "you have every right to be proud of yourself. Every stitch you sew, every effort you make, it matters. You are building more than quilts. You are building your life back." I felt a lump in my throat as I observed their interaction. Daniel's words had weight now because they came from experience, not theory. He had tasted failure, shame, and loss, and he now knew how to speak from the depth of understanding. Watching him, I realized that the silence I had maintained during his years of distance had allowed him space to grow, but it had also prepared him for the lessons only life itself could teach. After the seminar, Daniel and I sat on a bench outside the building, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the courtyard. "Mom, I think I'm finally beginning to understand what it means to be responsible for more than myself," he said, his voice low but firm. I nodded. Responsibility isn't about control or authority. It's about integrity, compassion, and the courage to face your mistakes head on. You're learning that, Daniel, and it's something money or recognition can never teach. He sighed, a mixture of relief and lingering guilt. I keep thinking about the years I wasted chasing approval instead of building something real. I was blind to so much: my arrogance, my fear, my willingness to let others define my worth. And I see now that all of it came at the expense of the people who truly loved me. "You've seen clearly now," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "That clarity is a gift. Not everyone reaches it in a lifetime." Daniel's eyes fell to his hands, clenched in his lap. I want to make amends, Mom. Not just with you, but with everyone I hurt. I don't want to leave a trail of broken trust behind me anymore. You start with yourself, I said firmly. Healing begins with acknowledging your mistakes, accepting the consequences, and committing to change. You've already taken the first steps. Now, keep moving forward. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel's transformation became evident not only to me, but to the women at the center. They began to trust him, confide in him, and seek his guidance. He had a natural empathy now, honed by pain and reflection, and he used it not to impress or manipulate, but to empower. I watched him help a young woman named Simone negotiate her first contract for handmade crafts, offering advice without overstepping, encouraging without controlling. She smiled at him gratefully, and I saw a quiet pride in his expression, a satisfaction rooted in authentic connection rather than recognition. One evening, Daniel came home with a letter in his hand, his face illuminated by a mix of surprise and disbelief. "Mom, this just arrived," he said, holding it out. I took it from him, recognizing the university's embossed logo instantly. He had applied for a summer fellowship in social innovation, something I had gently suggested months ago. The letter confirmed that he had been accepted, the scholarship covering all expenses, recognizing his efforts and potential in social development. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe it. After everything, they actually saw me for who I am now. Yes, I said softly. You earned it, not by trying to impress anyone, but by showing up, by working, and by growing through every challenge. Recognition follows genuine effort. That night, as we sat at the kitchen table sipping strong coffee, Daniel looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, I don't just want to learn from you. I want to continue your legacy. I want to be part of creating something that changes lives, not just for a moment, but for years to come." My heart swelled with pride and hope. "That's the beauty of life, Daniel," I said, voice trembling slightly. "The work we do, the love we give, the lessons we share, they ripple outward. They endure long after the moment has passed. You've seen that firsthand now." Over the next few weeks, Daniel's presence at the center became a constant source of inspiration for the women. He helped coordinate workshops, mentored young participants, and shared his own journey openly, showing that growth often comes from struggle, humility, and a willingness to confront one's flaws. The once timid, self-conscious young man had transformed into a figure of quiet strength and encouragement, someone who inspired others without ever seeking applause. One Sunday afternoon, as we closed the center, Daniel turned to me with a small, uncertain smile. "Mom, do you think it's possible to fully make up for lost time?" I paused, considering. Time can't be reclaimed, Daniel, but we can use it wisely moving forward. Every moment we spend learning, loving, and building, that's the time that truly matters. The rest is lessons, not regrets. He nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "I understand now. I'll keep showing up. Not because I have to, but because it's the right thing to do. And every step, no matter how small, counts." That evening, as I watched him leave for his fellowship orientation, I felt a profound sense of closure and hope. The storms of the past had tested us, shaped us, and ultimately revealed our resilience. Daniel was no longer the boy who feared embarrassment or judgment. He was a man who had faced shame, understood the weight of his actions, and emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to contribute meaningfully to the world. And as I stood at the doorway, watching him walk toward the fading sunlight, I knew that the lessons of the past were not just his. They were ours. Lessons of courage, accountability, and the unyielding power of love had etched themselves into our lives, creating a foundation that no storm could ever dismantle. The following morning, I awoke to the soft glow of sunlight spilling through the curtains, filtering into the room like a gentle promise. I had barely slept, but it was not from anxiety this time. It was from anticipation of what lay ahead. Daniel had invited me to attend the closing ceremony of his fellowship program, where participants were to present their social impact projects. It felt surreal, knowing that the boy who had once avoided any hint of confrontation who had feared even my gaze, was now stepping into a spotlight earned through effort, integrity, and personal growth. As we arrived at the auditorium, the air buzzed with excitement and nervous energy. Students, mentors, and faculty moved about, arranging materials, testing microphones, and whispering final reminders. I followed Daniel closely, noting the quiet confidence in his stride, the uprightness of his posture, and the calm focus in his eyes. Gone was the man who had once flinched at attention. In his place stood someone claiming his rightful space in the world. The ceremony began with a series of speeches, all acknowledging the hard work of the fellows, the community impact of their initiatives, and the dedication it took to balance learning with action. Daniel's project involved partnering with local artisans to provide mentorship and marketing support, enabling them to expand their reach and build sustainable livelihoods. The camera crew roamed the auditorium, capturing moments of engagement, laughter, and emotional triumph. And I realized I had no desire to interfere with his moment. I was not there to seek attention or validation. I was there to witness silently the culmination of his journey. When Daniel's name was called, a murmur of recognition traveled through the room. He stood, straightened his blazer, and began walking toward the stage, each step measured yet purposeful. I noticed that the women he had once helped at the center, some of whom had traveled to attend this event, rose to their feet and applauded warmly. Their faces reflected gratitude, pride, and a quiet acknowledgement of the man Daniel had become. The applause was not for show. It was sincere, born of respect and admiration for what he had accomplished and how he had transformed along the way. On stage, Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone. "Good afternoon," he began, voice steady but soft. "I am honored to stand here today, not because of my own achievements, but because of the people who guided me, challenged me, and taught me the value of resilience and humility." He paused, glancing briefly toward me. I nodded encouragingly, and he drew a deep breath, allowing the energy of the room to settle around him. "I want to tell you a story," he continued, his voice carrying a quiet intensity, "about a time when I was blind to the sacrifices of those who loved me, when I allowed pride, fear, and manipulation to cloud my judgment. I lost my way, thinking success was defined by status, money, and recognition. But it took the unwavering patience and courage of one person, my mother, to help me rediscover what truly matters. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. This was the son I had raised, the one I had nurtured, corrected, and sometimes shielded from the harshness of the world. His words carried weight because they were born of experience, not pretense. The audience was silent now, captivated, drawn into the gravity of his confession. "She never sought praise," Daniel continued. "She never demanded recognition. All she asked was that I see the truth, that I understand the value of integrity, compassion, and hard work. And through her guidance, I learned that real success is not what you accumulate, but what you give back to the people around you." Photos of his project began to appear on the large screen behind him. Women sewing with determination, children learning trades, markets bustling with opportunity. Each image told a story of transformation, of hope restored, and of dignity regained. I could see Daniel's pride in those moments, tempered by humility and gratitude. This was no longer the boy who had once turned away from me in embarrassment. This was a man fully aware of his past, determined to shape a better future. As he concluded his speech, Daniel turned to the audience with a final, earnest look. "I am here because someone believed in me when I could not believe in myself. I am here because I was given the chance to witness the power of love, patience, and guidance. And I stand here today, ready to continue the work, to build, to heal, and to honor those who have come before me. Thank you." The applause was thunderous. Standing ovation, clapping, cheering, some even wiping tears from their eyes. I clutched my seat, heart swelling, knowing that the journey that had begun in silence and shame had culminated in a moment of undeniable pride and redemption. After the ceremony, Daniel approached me, his eyes shining with excitement and relief. "Mom, we did it. All of it. The fellowship, the projects, the impact, it's real. And it feels right. I embraced him tightly, feeling the strength and sincerity in his arms. Yes, Daniel. It is right because it is earned, not given. It is right because it is true to who you are now, not who you were forced to be. We walked out into the afternoon light, the streets alive with people returning home, unaware of the profound transformations occurring in the lives they passed. Daniel spoke eagerly about his plans for expanding the program, incorporating more women into leadership roles, and developing new initiatives to support the community. I listened, offering guidance when appropriate, but mostly standing back, allowing him to claim his place in the world. That evening, as we returned home, a quiet settled over the house. I noticed the familiar scent of old wood, lavender, and fresh flowers lingering in the air, grounding me in the simplicity and authenticity of our life together. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, reviewing notes and planning the next steps for his fellowship, and I realized how much he had grown, not just in skill, but in character, empathy, and purpose. Weeks later, we received a surprising message from the university. They wanted to feature Daniel's project in an international publication on social innovation and community development. His work would be showcased to thousands of readers, inspiring others to create similar programs in their own communities. Daniel turned to me, eyes wide with disbelief. "Mom, this is incredible. They're actually going to show the world what we've built." "Yes," I said, smiling. "But remember this, the recognition is secondary. The true measure is the lives you've touched and the dignity you've restored. That is eternal." Daniel nodded, a deep understanding reflected in his gaze. He was no longer chasing approval or status. He was pursuing impact and meaning, and I could not have been prouder of the man he had become, tempered by humility and fortified by the lessons of his past mistakes. One Sunday, as we sat together at the center, Daniel approached me with a small envelope. "I wanted to give you something," he said, handing it over carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter detailing his gratitude, his reflections on the journey, and a commitment to continue the legacy of compassion and action we had built together. Tears filled my eyes as I read his words, the honesty, vulnerability, and love shining through every sentence. "Mom," he said softly, "I know I can never repay you for everything you've done, but I promise to live in a way that honors your sacrifices, your lessons, and your unwavering belief in me." I reached across the table, holding his hands, feeling the warmth and life pulsing through him. "You've already honored me, Daniel. By learning, growing, and becoming a man of integrity, you've given me the greatest gift anyone could offer, hope for the future, and the knowledge that love and perseverance endure." And in that moment, I understood that the storms we had weathered together had not destroyed us. They had strengthened us, bound us by lessons learned, trust rebuilt, and love reaffirmed. Daniel had walked through shadow, shame, and doubt, emerging into a light that was entirely his own. And I, as his mother, had witnessed every step, every faltering moment and every triumph, knowing that our journey, while far from over, had reached a point of profound transformation and redemption. Weeks passed, yet the memory of the fellowship ceremony remained vivid in my mind, a reminder of how far Daniel had come and how much had changed between us. I began to see the world differently too, not just through the lens of my own experience, but through the reflections of a son who had learned humility, compassion, and accountability the hard way. Life, I realized, never offered second chances in a neat, predictable package. It gave them disguised as trials, moments of failure, and opportunities to rise when you felt you could not. Daniel had settled into a small apartment with 2 roommates, modest, functional, yet full of laughter and shared struggles. Every Sunday, as promised, he came over for lunch, often bringing small dishes he had cooked himself, sometimes experimenting with recipes, sometimes with minor disasters that made us both laugh. It was during those Sundays, in the quiet rhythm of conversation and shared meals, that I saw his transformation most clearly. He spoke of challenges at work, moments of triumph in his fellowship, and reflections on life that were no longer shallow or self-centered. Each story, each revelation, reminded me that growth was a journey, not a destination, and that love was not a series of transactions, but a continuous evolving act. One afternoon, while Daniel helped me organize papers for my graduate research, he paused, leaning back and looking around the room. "You know, Mom," he said softly, "I used to think that success meant getting ahead of others, showing people what I could achieve. Now I understand that success is about lifting others, creating opportunities, and leaving the world better than you found it." His words struck me, resonating deeply, because they reflected exactly what I had always hoped to instill. Not obedience or fear, but empathy, initiative, and moral courage. I reflected on my own journey, the years of labor, sacrifice, and silent endurance. From running the sewing center, mentoring hundreds of women, to returning to school at 68, every step had been a choice to persevere despite doubt, age, and societal expectations. I realized that the true value of these experiences was not the recognition or awards, but the transformation of those lives touched by honest work, love, and guidance. Daniel's growth was a reflection of that same principle. The investment of care, patience, and unwavering support can yield results far beyond what one can measure in money or accolades. One day, Daniel asked if he could take me to the center, to see how the women we had helped were doing, to witness the impact firsthand. As we entered, the room buzzed with activity, women sewing, discussing projects, laughing, sharing advice. Some recognized Daniel instantly, greeting him warmly, grateful for his engagement, while others were curious, asking questions about his work and his perspective. I watched him interact, listen, and offer encouragement, noticing how different he had become, present, patient, and genuinely invested in their success. It was a beautiful symmetry. What I had once offered him, he now offered to others, understanding the weight of influence and the importance of giving without expectation. Later, as we walked home in the fading light, Daniel spoke quietly. "Mom, I never thought I'd understand what you did all these years, or why it mattered so much. I was so blind, so wrapped up in appearances and ambition. But now I see, real power is not taken. It's shared. Real respect is not demanded. It's earned. And real love sets boundaries and teaches lessons that last a lifetime." I smiled, a mixture of pride and relief washing over me. It was rare in life to witness such a complete turnaround. But more importantly, it was a testament to the enduring truth that integrity, compassion, and perseverance are forces that no amount of arrogance or manipulation can suppress. I thought of the students, the women, and the countless lives changed quietly, steadily, without fanfare, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction that transcended recognition or applause. In the following months, Daniel continued his internship, gradually earning promotions and accolades for his initiative and dedication. He began documenting his experiences and sharing them on social media, not for attention, but to inspire others to recognize the value of honest effort and genuine mentorship. His posts, candid and heartfelt, detailed failures, lessons learned, and moments of personal growth. One post in particular went viral, 50,000 likes, hundreds of comments praising his honesty and vulnerability. People wrote about how they had been moved to reconnect with their own families, support their communities, and value integrity over superficial success. Stella and Brenda, who had once controlled and manipulated, vanished from our lives. Their absence was not something we mourned. It was a natural consequence of boundaries firmly established and lessons learned through consequence rather than confrontation. Daniel had grown to recognize that toxic influences must be distanced, not for revenge, but for the preservation of personal growth and moral clarity. One Sunday, Daniel brought over a small gift, a handmade notebook. "It's for your thoughts, reflections, and plans," he said. "I want you to keep recording the lessons you teach, the stories of the women you mentor, and the journey of both of us. It's a legacy, Mom, and I want it preserved." I held the notebook, feeling the weight of intention behind the gesture, and realized that our experiences, once fraught with pain, humiliation, and misunderstanding, had now become a source of empowerment and inspiration. In that moment, I understood the most profound lesson of all. Life is a cycle of giving, learning, and forgiving, but on terms that honor truth and personal dignity. Forgiveness does not mean erasing the past. It means reclaiming your own power, choosing your own boundaries, and allowing transformation to occur naturally. Daniel had learned this, and in doing so, he had become a conduit for others to learn it as well. I had learned it too, reinforced by decades of endurance, love, and the courage to stand firm in the face of adversity. As I sat on the porch that evening, sipping coffee and watching the purple flowers bloom, I reflected on the journey we had undertaken together. Every mistake, every moment of shame, every tear shed had led to this, a genuine connection between mother and son, a life of service and impact, and a new understanding of what it meant to truly love and nurture. I realized that our stories of failure, resilience, and redemption carry a message for anyone willing to listen, that it is never too late to rise, to reconcile, and to embrace purpose. And so I ask you, the reader, the listener, the witness to this story, have you ever felt that a relationship, a chance, or a dream was beyond repair? Have you ever experienced shame, misunderstanding, or distance, only to realize that growth and forgiveness are within your reach? Life's lessons are often hidden in pain, but they illuminate the path forward if you are willing to see, learn, and act. If you take one message from this story, let it be this: true love sets boundaries. Resilience builds character, and integrity transforms lives. The greatest victories are not those measured by accolades or wealth, but by the positive impact we have on others and the courage we show in staying true to ourselves. Daniel learned that, I learned that, and perhaps you can too. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you want to continue hearing stories of courage, compassion, and resilience, stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, follow this channel. Subscribe, share your experiences in the comments, and become part of a community that believes in rising after brokenness, in giving after hurt, and in living with purpose. Because in every story, there is a lesson waiting for you, a spark to inspire change, and a reminder that redemption is always possible, no matter how long the shadow of the past may seem.